Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things.
2, 1, 0, all engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower clear.
But other sightings apparently were taken more seriously.
And one in particular, an incident called the Rendlesham Forest Incident, also known as Britain's Roswell. This was in 1980, shortly after Christmas, when a few American airmen who were stationed in the UK reported seeing a UFO.
A huge, solid, diamond-shaped object they described as 100 foot long, hovering silently in the sky above them.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone, whatever that means.
American public and global public finally understands UFOs are real. This is a technology that is so far beyond anything that we have.
Reportedly appear to exhibit unusual flight characteristics, appear to demonstrate advanced technology.
Arrow is the culmination of decades of DoD, intelligence community, and congressionally directed efforts to successfully resolve UAP encountered first and foremost by U.S. military.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Disclosure Team. I'm your host, Vinny Adams. The following is an interview with Matt Laslo. Matt is an independent journalist working on Capitol Hill. In this interview, we dig deep into the inner workings of many of the committees, the Senate, the House, and talk all things Congress. Unfortunately, we were limited to 1 hour. This conversation could have easily gone on for 2 or more hours. So Matt has agreed he will be back at another point, because I know a lot of you had submitted questions that I was just unable to ask in this interview. If you enjoy this content, please take a second just to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I really appreciate all the support. Share it with your friends and comment down below. I try and read all the comments. I hope you enjoy this interview with Matt Laslo. So good to have you here, man. How are you doing today?
As I tell people these days, I'm miserable because 18 years ago I made bad life choices and became a political reporter. This is all on me. Should have stayed a music reporter.
Wait, did you start off doing music?
Yeah, I say I know how to deal with asshole politicians from dealing with asshole musicians. Music is what keeps me alive.
So is that what you do when you get back from the hill? You just put on some vinyl, or is it like...
Well, way back in the day, I was friends with all of DC's like, popping off music scene, but DC doesn't have our own record labels. So I'm friends with all these great bands who are now in LA, New York, Austin, or most of my buddies are in Nashville. So I get to travel down there every once in a while, but yeah. Music is much better than politics.
I hear that. So listen, tell me, what initially sparked your interest in covering the UAP subject?
Well, so remember, at the start of last year, American airspace was invaded by this Chinese spy balloon, and Congress, at least in the Senate, they had, I think, at least two classified briefings back to back. And then if you remember, after that first one shot down off the coast of South Carolina, then you had the U.S. Air Force, I think within like 3 or 4 days, just shoot down 3 objects. And they didn't stop shooting down objects because they're not there anymore. They stopped because the American people started freaking the fuck out. And so I was like, So I was like, wait, what is this? And then just a few weeks or maybe a month after that, then, and like the Beltway media had already moved on past it. But then that David Grush piece in the Debrief, their great first article on it hit around May or whatever. And, so I'm a congressional junkie. Like usually, so I've been covering Congress 18 years. The way to like move up in the Washington media circles is to like become a White House correspondent. Right. Fuck that. I'm a congressional junkie and I love me my little Constitution. And I've actually read it. And what does the Constitution say? It says that the White House is meaningless. Like we fought a war with y'all, red coats way back in the day because we didn't want a strong central government. And so the Constitution puts Congress in the driver's seat, but just over the decades, all Congresses of all parties just cede all of their power to whoever's in the White House. And so like this blows my mind. But the reason Biden right now can after the Houthis kill a couple of our soldiers, what does Biden do? He drops 85. So we do 85 military strikes in the Middle East. And they say that's not a war. I'm like, 85 different sites. Come on, that feels like a war to me.
Yep.
But the reason he's able to do that is because of the AUMF, the Authorization for Military Force, that Congress gave George W. Bush back in 21 or whatever, or 2001. So yeah, Congress is just derelict. But according to our Constitution, they're the ones who are supposed to be in the driver's seat on all things spending and all things war and peace. If we're attacked, the president can retaliate and do all that. But so Grush's first claim was, hey, there's recovered craft and this stuff. His second claim really struck home to this political nerd. And because his second claim was that there's these SAPs or special access programs that are in a roundabout way funded by Congress because all spending starts and stops with Congress, but that those SAPs are hidden from Congress by the executive branch. And so that's why last year I took that and ran with it because I had a chance to ask 100 U.S. senators, 100 out of 100, to their faces, whether they're living up to the Constitution. And sadly, only a handful were. Because I'm like, debunk David Grush's second claim or shut the fuck up. You're not doing your job.
Yeah.
Just publicly debunk it, show us evidence that, he didn't know this, that. But no, what are we hearing? Just silence and criticisms from Kirkpatrick and Arrow. These people are nuts. No. You guys have a simple job. Yeah. Debunk David Grush. Just debunk him. Or you shut the fuck up.
Yeah, no. That's good. I like it. Fiery, man. But you mentioned in there the Chinese balloon, and that was what, February 23, and there were so many conspiracies that formed out of those other three objects, and no one was talking about it. Nothing was coming from the government. Did you follow along with that as it was did you chase up with it? Because I know that a lot of the mainstream media talked about it for about a week or two, and then it just disappeared.
So I have followed up a little bit, and I still need to follow up a little bit more because I asked both of Alaska's senators, Dan Sullivan and then Lisa Murkowski, because both of them, they're Alaska. So both of them were briefed by the Alaska National Guard and Air Force. When I initially asked them last summer, so probably July, both of them told me that they had the briefing, but they didn't see any pictures of what was shot down, and they talked about, just on this iceberg and Alaska's huge and the Air Force couldn't retrieve it. Well, I was like, well, did you see the images? And both of them then told me, no, we didn't see the images. And you could kind of see the question marks in their heads. They're like, oh, and so I gave them some space to follow up. Well, then the next time I circled back with Senator Murkowski on it, she told me she had seen images. And so that post is up at askapol.com. I'm still intrigued on that because I wonder if either she had a little mental hiccup or if maybe she had a second briefing. But the way she said it wasn't 100% convincing. It was kind of like, oh, no, I did. Yeah, I did see it. And so when she said that, she said that it was the object looked similar to the balloon that was shot off South Carolina's coast. But like she didn't say it with 100% confidence. So I need to circle back with her. But before I do that, I want to ask Sullivan because maybe he can give me, this is what I do. It's not playing lawmakers off each other, but my thing is, even like when we publish interviews from 100 senators, like, please, folks, do not listen to one of those and be like, oh, the voice of God. Like, I interview 535 liars for a living. Like, these are politicians, and they're subjective. So each one of them only sees as much as they can see. And so that's where I'm not like, I don't see my role or Askapol's role on Capitol Hill as like, oh, we're going to find the smoking gun. We're going to help in that, but we're going to keep taking what one lawmaker tells us, rubbing it off what another lawmaker tells us. And like somewhere in between is the truth. We hope.
No, and that's what I like about the work you do. You put it all out there for everyone to kind of make their own minds up. You're just there asking the questions. And a lot of the time, and this is what I love, is you're asking the questions on behalf of the people you have following you or subscribe to you. And I think that's just a brilliant, a thing to do. But you must rub shoulders with a lot of the mainstream media as well.
But dude, so just yesterday, we broke news because we've opened up other verticals on Askapol. We've got our UAP one, which is our main one. But then, I used to be a cannabis reporter, drug policy reporter for Rolling Stone, Playboy, Vice, all them. I love drugs. Put it that way, to varying degrees. And so, we've got our drugs vertical. And so just yesterday, one of our subscribers asked me like simple question. Because right now our DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, might be like rumors that I've heard or that April 15th, they're going to reschedule marijuana, bring it down instead of like where it is now with cocaine, acid, all that stuff. Bring it down to like maybe Tylenol or something. There's still going to be restrictions because Biden's a prohibitionist. But when I asked Senator Cory Booker about that, he was like, I'm hearing those rumors too. But then one of our subscribers had asked, well, so this banking legislation, this Safe Banking Act, or now it's the Safer Banking Act. The guy was like, wait, if the DEA moves on its own, do we even need that Banking Act measure to like normalize the cannabis banking industry? And I asked Booker about it, and boom, we blow up the internet. And like, I didn't think to combine those two thoughts, but it just worked out brilliantly, and we broke the internet, not because I'm smart, but because our subscribers are brilliant.
That's amazing. I love that kind of thing. And that, I guess that's the beauty of having that connection to your subscribers and not just reporting it. And it's a one-directional thing. That yours is two-directional, and I really love that. But I was going to say, you must rub shoulders with a lot of the bigwigs at the mainstream media as well. I mean, how do you find their reporting on specifically the UAP subject compared to the way that you do it?
Well, so it's funny. Like, so I've been a reporter covering Congress 18 years now. I actually have my own bureau, the Laslo Congressional Bureau, but it's now the LCB because that's what my interns call it, and my interns are cooler than my ass. And so historically, I've covered Congress for these days I've filed stories for over 65 local NPR stations. So like you said, you're in North Carolina. So I've worked in the past for WUNC, WFDD in Winston-Salem. So like I know kind of every state by their NPR call letters, which is kind of why lawmakers know me, because I know them. They know me as a local reporter. Or I angle myself in that way, even if I'm working on a national story. I'll be like, hey, Senator Tillis, I used to work for WFDD in Winston-Salem. And they're like, oh, you're local. But so with that, I'm Radio TV Gallery. My press pass thing is Radio TV Gallery in the Capitol. And so that means I sit right next to CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all those folks, NPR, they're all up in our gallery. And obviously I stick out a little bit at the Capitol and amongst the press corps. And so also because I'm a professor on the side, I'm a media professor. And so a lot of my critiques, because sometimes I do op-eds under my professor cap for like Reuters, Guardian, Well, so I'm pretty fucking hard on my infotainment colleagues who make a lot more goddamn money than me for peddling their lies or pop BS. But so it's interesting. We have this like love-hate relationship, a little bit skeptical. They are of me, I'm dismissive of them. But it was interesting. So after the Grush hearing last July, everyone in the UAP caucus demanded that skiff briefing. Well, I went to it at the end of last year, and it was literally just me and our friends at News Nation. And I think they had like a 4-person crew. And so it was literally one picture I took is like all News Nation folks, and then Ask a Poll taking the picture. Well, when those members came out of that briefing, they were all unified in being like disgusted and being like, they have no respect for us. Like they didn't even bring answers to the questions they knew we were going to ask. Well, so that strategy by the Intel community seemed to have backfired, because fast forward to the start of this year in January, I think that first gift briefing, there was like 8 or 10 lawmakers maybe. Well, the second one, Burchett told us that there were 16 lawmakers in there at one point. And then outside it, you had not just News Nation and Ask a Poll, you also had CNN, Fox News, I saw Axios there, I think Washington Post, a friend from the Hill was there. And so that kind of fascinates me. For one, watching, because again, I'm a media prof, like watching the media strategy blow up in the Intel community's face, because, oh, you went from 8 inquisitive lawmakers to 16. Right. But then also you got a more curious press corps. And that's where you can tell some of them are flirting with it, but just like so many lawmakers, there's this like old school trope that is still that still sticks to this issue in many circles. In many circles, like amongst the American public, where 70% say, yeah, of course there's life out there. And, that's where it's interesting watching, because some lawmakers, like Ro Khanna, he represents Silicon Valley out in California. Him and AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York, both of them, like progressive Dems, they were both in that second briefing.
Yeah,
AOC
that's
tells
surprising.
Me, and AOC, she's interested in it from the military contracting angle.
Sure.
Ro Khanna, he told us at Ask a Poll, he was like, I'm hearing about this from constituents and stuff.
Right.
And so that's where it's kind of cool seeing this community, the UAP community, UFO community, for one, like being effective in raising these questions to Congress's radar. And then the media is like slowly following. But yeah, that's where the media and politicians kind of get stuck in these same, that's where a lot of times I'm starting to view, especially anchors at CNN, MSNBC or whatever, I'm starting to view them more as lawmakers themselves, because like someone like Jake Tapper, like on one of his programs, he was like, oh, this fentanyl stuff, it's terrible, which it is. Like, watch the fuck out for it. Get testing strips and get naloxone, which I carry with me at the Capitol every day, because politicians do drugs too. But so with that, you had Jake Tapper. He was like, well, this fentanyl stuff's so bad. I just tell my kids, don't even touch it. You can't even take those drugs. Wait. What did you just say, Jake? Did you say just say no? Because a lot of my friends died because that was the policy, to just say no. And guess what? We're Americans. We never just say fucking no. We say, give me more. And so kind of same thing with these UFO tropes. You kind of see the media, a term I hate, but you see these news organizations just carry the government's line. And that's where the UAP caucus is brilliant, because they're asking these questions, and I'm just covering the lawmakers asking these questions. And I don't think enough news outlets are covering them yet, but they need to start. I mean, Senator Gillibrand from New York, she just got back from Congress. They always take, they give themselves lots of vacations. So they had a week off like 2 weeks ago for President's Day. And Gillibrand was out in Nevada, and like she was met with Air Force folks, Lockheed Martin folks, and then Northrop Grumman folks. And like all three of those were classified. So asking her about it, she was like, in next year's NDAA, or pardon me, this year's NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, her takeaway from that was she's going to fight for more censors, because she says, without a shadow of a doubt, that there are objects, crafts, whatever, hovering over sensitive military sites, but not just like one-off here, there. She says it's a persistent problem. So last week, Intel chair Mark Warner in the Senate, he tried to laugh off the UFO issue and be like, no, it's nothing extraterrestrial. I was like, bro. Senator Gillibrand, who was on Senate Intel, says that there are crafts, there are objects hovering over sensitive U.S. military sites. Like, you might want me to just talk about ET so that you can like laugh off the conversation, but no, you're not doing your fucking job as long as there are objects hovering over sensitive military sites. And you take about $1 trillion a year from us U.S. taxpayers and give it to the military industrial complex. That money doesn't cover our U.S. airspace. Like, you guys let us, on your watch, we were invaded by a fucking balloon. Like, shut the fuck up. I don't have time for these kids.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, hey guys, just interrupting this interview quickly to let you know about the Anomalous Research and Exploration Forum. It is a 2-day virtual conference put on by myself at Disclosure Team towards the end of April. If you head on over to the website, the link is in the description. You will have a look at all of the speakers and guests for the event, including Danny Sheehan, Avi Loeb, Beatrice Villarreal, Graham Rendell, Chris Sharp, Carl the Crusher, and more. Go and check it out. I really, really appreciate all the support. It's going to be an excellent weekend, and I hope to see you there. Look, one thing I really wanted to talk about was obviously that big story that you broke with Luna and Gates having this briefing where they were allegedly shown videos of bodies, I believe it was. Can you just kind of talk us through that? Because I know a few days later there were things said that they didn't see that, and it all just kind of got a little bit blurry.
All I know is what I was told from someone who's very close to them, an ally of them. They just whispered in my ear one morning, and like, I did not expect to be asking those questions. But someone whispered in my ear, hey, they've seen a video with bodies. So I go and just ask Luna, and there was just a big vote on something, maybe one of these government funding measures. So there was 2 or 3 reporters who left the Capitol with her, came down the steps as she was getting in her car. And I'm just like waiting for all of them to wrap up so that I can ask her if she's seen fucking bodies, So like those tropes or whatever kind of rub off on me where I'm like, oh, gotta watch my reputation. Well, so when I asked her, I was expecting her to be like, what, moron? No, like that's dumb. But instead she just says, I can't comment on that stuff. You can listen to the interview for yourself, askapoll.com, but she's basically like, I can't comment on that. That was classified briefing. So then the next day, so that story's blowing up. And especially that homeboy from the New York Post, like he was shitting himself, green streak, green black, whatever. So he was like, oh, no, like they can't be talking about alien bodies. Like, no, come, dude, meet the 118th Congress. Like, yes, they were. And so Matt Gaetz, who him and I have had a love-hate relationship for a long time. He's always loved me for my drug policy coverage for Rolling Stone or whatever. I think one time when AOC just got to the Hill, we had AOC and Gaetz in one of our headlines on the two of them teaming up on a psilocybin or magic mushroom bill. And Gaetz just like came himself, you know, because he's there with a headline with AOC and, you know, he retweeted it. She didn't retweet it. And aside, I'm a media professor. The side of the internet that AOC and Matt Gaetz see is the dirtiest, nastiest, most disgusting. Like, because both of them have retweeted me at times. Right. And then for a week, your mentions are all just like death threats, rape threats, like just gross stuff. Yeah. All that to say, be nice when you type. These are humans. They might be assholes politically, but stick with their policy. So anyway, Gaetz, who loved me for my drug coverage, always kind of hated me. He would always be like, why do you write for the Daily Beast? At one point, I heard him telling a profiler from Vanity Fair, I believe, that us at the Daily Beast were looking for his birth certificate because we were like contacting people we went to college with, contacting people we went to law school with. So he's just like, hated me for some stuff, loved me for others. So like I text him, you know, hey, can you confirm or deny this about Luna? Don't hear back, so no text back that night. And I was kind of telling people online, like, hey, right now, Gaetz knows this is out there, and he is not telling me to pull this back. Well, so then the next day, you know, I'm slammed with deadlines, and I get a DM from his new press secretary, and I'm thinking like, oh shit, here we are like 12, 18 hours after we dropped this explosive story with Luna. And I'm like, and now Gaetz, he's going to fuck me over by now saying, hey, you got to retract it. And so when I go and look at what his office sent me, all it was, and it's public on our site, all it was a confirmation. Yes, we had that classified briefing. And then the second clause or whatever was, and I can't comment on it because it was classified. Like anyone else you'd ask, like, hey, have you been in a classified briefing where you saw bodies? They'd be like, no, you're full of shit. What are you talking about? Like, what are you on? Etc. And so with that one, I'm very curious what they were shown, who showed it to them. My source, which we have on our site, confirmed that it was active duty military. But because neither of them are on the House Intelligence committees, they don't have the top level or top secret classification. I'm pretty sure Luna, she served in the Air Force herself. She could have one, but it's highly unlikely. I don't think she was intel with them, but she still could have, but it'd be rare. And I just don't think either of them do. Gaetz is on the Armed Services Committee, where it seems like folks on the Armed Services Committee have like a little bit of a higher level of classification just than every elected member of Congress, which every elected member of Congress kind of has a certain level of classification. But like in a briefing where there's going to be 435 House members or 535, you know, the entire Congress, you know, the intel community or Pentagon isn't going to lay all their cards out. You know, they're like, there's some nut jobs here on the left, there's some nut jobs here on the right. You know, there's going to be hesitant. And so I'm curious, because neither of them are on these committees, who gave the briefing, whether it was official. Now, the two of them are both from Florida, and there's a lot of military installations in Florida. So it could have been just an off the books, like maybe one of them went to school. Hell, she served in the military, so she might know people. So I'm just curious what that briefing looked like. But then remember, I'm a media professor. I've got books stacked up here on deepfakes. Like, we're in the fucking deepfake era. So I'm like, well, for one, what were they shown? For two, what did they think they saw? You know, like, yeah, everyone remember, we're in the deepfake era. If you see something that you think is like, oh, proof, like that's the smoking gun, that's probably a fake. Like, if you love Trump or love Biden and a piece of media comes out that like is the smoking gun, like puts an end to Trump's career, puts an end to Biden's career, that's probably a fake. Like, if it feels too good to be true, hits every, you know, chord in your body, be skeptical. Like, be skeptical of what feels right these days. Because, yeah, what's online, what's on our screens is nebulous and just getting more nebulous. So, yeah, that's where all I know is neither of those lawmakers told me, pull it down, your reporting's off. Now, we know I don't trust Matt Gaetz fully, so that's all I'll say about that. But I bet he's got good drugs.
I mean, I think as well is like any video that we'd see, we'd need a serious chain of custody to kind of give it any kind of, you know, it'd have to have so much added on with it. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where I don't. Yeah, and that's especially like with the government being, you know, dragging its feet and being, you know, so old school secretive on this stuff. Like that example with Skiff Briefing 1 post Grush to Skiff Briefing 2. Like, it blew up in the intelligence community's face because Congress just came back with more questions, you know, more skepticism. And so that's where I'm curious if at a certain point, the Pentagon, the old school folks kind of wake up and realize, oh, we have to change our tactics or whatever here, which might mean like being more open with Congress and the American people. Because like one thing I have seen is, you know, when the Crush news dropped, I believe it was last May or
I think it was June the 5th, I think it
April.
was.
Oh, so
was
June,
May the 5th? I forget now.
Yeah. So when Grush drops that, you had two senators come out just hot and heavy. Vice Chair of the Senate Intel Committee, Marco Rubio, Republican, and then Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, you know,
right, former
presidential contender in her mind. Every senator is a presidential contender in their own minds. But no, she made some traction, and you know, she might be eyeing it in the future. So she's a very serious lawmaker. In the old 5 years ago, we might have called her a moderate Democrat. I don't know if anyone's moderate in this town anymore. But she came out just being like, yeah. And remember, she was the one who spearheaded that first Senate UFO hearing in 2022. You know, so she's been at this issue. She's kind of the reason we have Arrow. And you can kind of see her like tuck Arrow under her arm like it's her little baby. Yeah. And it's like, lady, you don't know, your kid's deformed. And so like the two of them just came out hot and heavy on, you know, we're going to uncover, get to the bottom of Grush's thing. But then within a month or two, they both kind of went quiet. And what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is, all right, what briefing did they have? Like, for one, were they spun in that briefing? Or like, shit, were they like shown all the secrets and like all the jewels and they just like now look at me like ghosts because they're like, no, we don't want to talk about it. Because when you look at the House, because most of the people in the Congressional UAP caucus are younger, newer members of Congress, none of them are on the Intel committee.
Right.
So none of them have that top secret level of clearance. And so that's where I'm super curious, because I'm like, wait, if UAP caucus members were in that briefing, the briefing that I've made up in my mind that Intel members had, just because you saw such a stark change in what Rubio told me and others, and what Gillibrand told me and others. And then these days, they're just kind of like, And so I'm like, wait, if UAP caucus members were in there, would they have asked different questions?
Sure, right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm super curious, but I do get this sense that senators have been placated a little more, where House members, they're just more fired up because they're like, no, you guys are lying. Every hurdle they throw up, they're like, see, they are lying. We were right. And so I'm curious if the Intel community, Pentagon, changed their tactics to deal with a House, or whether they just stay arrogant fucks and remaining.
You never know, do you?
Yeah.
I mean, the last I sort of really heard, or what I saw or noticed from Marco Rubio, is that he did seem frustrated with how Sean Kirkpatrick was dismissive of Grush's claims. But then after that, that was kind of it.
And
weird.
That might have been our piece at Askapol. And what was beautiful about our last Rubio interview, Rubio, you can kind of tell his frustration was kind of like, I don't want to talk to you about this issue. This is why we created Arrow, so that we don't have to think about this. You know, like, he's like, we created it and then washed our hands of this. Arrow is supposed to be, you know, sending, like, basically they created Arrow as their brain trust to do the thinking for them on these issues. And that's where I'm now pressing all these lawmakers. Like, do you think having Arrow housed in the Pentagon, but like low in the Pentagon, do you think that's wise? Because if they're going to ever uncover what's, like, for one, top Pentagon brass, are they even letting the little folks at Arrow even see the secrets, you know?
Right.
But that's where our government's so huge, and it's just, I mean, the Pentagon itself is just, is it the building with the most square footage in the world? Like, it's
got some record, yeah.
Yeah, there's like secret corridors in the Pentagon that even people in the Pentagon don't know about.
Listen, I wanted to talk to you as well, Matt, about this story, which I think you dropped today, which is Representative Courtney saying that, did the Intel chair Turner or the House Armed Services Committee Chair Rogers gut Schumer's UAPDA? What can you tell us about this story?
This is where, you know, Mike Turner, he's the boogeyman in the UFO community, and for good fucking reasons, you know? He wears slick clothes, like he dresses too much like a Bond villain. And it's interesting with Turner, because I used to cover him for Dayton, Ohio's local NPR station. Okay. So like 15 years ago, I would talk with Mike Turner in the Capitol. Never often, because he's a vanilla motherfucker. Dude didn't have that much to say, which is probably why he quietly moved up the leadership chain. And especially because former Speaker Boehner was from Ohio. And that kind of allowed Turner to fast track on his coattails. So, like, I've got my eye on Turner. One thing I've been doing the past few weeks, like State of the Union night, I was like, hey, how are you, sir? And I caught him off guard because he gave me like a hearty greeting back. And I'm like, you forgot that I'm the enemy. So I'm gonna like kill him with kindness for the next few weeks and see if he won't talk to me. Because, like, what did he tell me last year? He's like, I don't do ambush interviews in the Capitol. And I'm like, ambush? I got my First Amendment, my quill that wrote it, tatted on my fucking arm. There ain't nothing ambush about this. Like, when foreign, members of parliament from the UK, when they come to America's Congress, or folks from the Ukraine parliament, their eyes are always like, wait, you let these rabid dogs, us in the press corps, you let them just roam everywhere? Yeah, it's called the First Amendment. It's a bitch. Press corps, we're the bitch, we should be less bitches, but que sera, sera. We're working on it. And so, like, Turner he'll only go on the friendly confines of Fox Newsmax, publications like that these days. So I'm like trying to break him down a little bit so he'll talk to me. But the top Democrat on House Intel is Jim Himes, who I've covered locally for Connecticut public radio stations. And he actually texted me back a couple weeks ago. Yeah, when Turner put out that trial balloon or whatever on the Russia nuclear program in space or whatever he was trying to do there.
Yeah.
Himes was quick to text me back and be like, no, what this one member of the Senate Intelligence Committee had told me, he's like, no, that's off, and so he's still a great source of mine. Pardon me. And so Himes had told me, and this is where I'm curious, and this is where the internal politics really matter, even though they might be a little fucking boring, because Himes, we kind of know that he's just dismissive of it. He was there with Andre Carson for that first UFO hearing in 50 years, the one in 2022 that really got the ball rolling. And what Himes says to this day is, look, the two government workers who, Pentagon guys, what they told me is no, there's no UFO things. So I take them at their word. And I'm like, really? You take them at your word? So there's no curiosity with him. He's heard what he needs to hear. It's just a non-issue. And so throughout those NDAA negotiations, Himes repeatedly told me, and I believe him, that he's never discussed or hadn't last year discussed UAPs with Turner. That could mean two things. It could mean that the House Intelligence Committee just doesn't care about this investigation or whatever, much like the Senate Armed Services Committee. They don't give a shit about this from what they say publicly. It's more the Senate Intelligence Committee. Those members are cued in. But in the House, pardon me. So with Turner on Intel, if Himes, the top Democrat, doesn't care, that could super empower Turner to be able to handle the issue on his own. You know what I'm saying? If your top Democrat doesn't care. And so that's where I need to work Turner more to get him talking. But what I know from last year's NDAA, that conference committee, the one sham public hearing they had for 20 minutes, maybe 2.5 hours, but members came out of there early being that was bullshit. In the hall there, I did get a one-on-one with HASC, or House Armed Services Committee Chair Mike Rogers. Okay. And what was interesting about that was Rogers, it was just short exchange. He's walking with a huge entourage. I think there were military cats. It was just a big entourage of, his intel staff and, just his team. And so quick exchange. But what Rogers told me was, so what he said that was enlightening. For one, he knew about Schumer's UAP amendment. And to take a quick step back with me, last year, members of the UAP caucus in the House hadn't even heard of Schumer's amendment until Ask a Poll asked him about it. And then they were like, oh, we've got to note that. The House and the Senate, they just are two different universes. And so they just don't dialogue until the end. That's where I'm intrigued this year on the NDAA, because the UAP members know about this early and those conversations are starting a little earlier. I'm curious. I know nothing, but I'm curious watching how this plays out going forward. But so that's when I was struck that Rogers, the chair of HASC, really powerful committee, that he, for one, knew about Schumer's UAP amendment and he had criticisms of it. He was basically I think, or he was kind of saying, go back and listen to it at askapol.com. But Rogers, the way I took it was he was kind of yeah, I've heard that parts of this are redundant. And so that's where I get curious. I'm wait, you think it's redundant because one of your staff members has really studied and knows this issue? Or does someone at the Pentagon, who you, by the nature of your job as chair of that committee, the Pentagon picks up your calls, and sometimes even before the president's call, because you're Congress and you do control the purse strings. And so you have that wedding of our military industrial complex with our military congressional leaders, to a very unhealthy degree. And so that's where I'm very curious. Because everyone, remember this, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, for one, put out a UAP amendment, and then he had it gutted to his fucking face. He's the Senate Majority Leader. Like, nobody can roll up on his measures and just slice them and dice them, except Mitchie Poo McConnell, his boy from Kentucky, his perpetual thorn in his side. And so that's where I haven't gotten a sense. Oh, because then talking to Senate Armed Services folks, Roger Wicker, who's GOP leadership, he told me back then, he's like, yeah, that issue's above our pay grade. And so that's where I'm very curious. And then remember, Speaker Johnson, he's a newbie. So you could see maybe Speaker McCarthy, who's got, airfields out in Bakersfield, in Cali, where he's at, he would have more knowledge of this stuff. And so Speaker Johnson had just been put in. So part of me is like, wait, Speaker Johnson now, and this is where you can tell, like, I'm just a constant devil's advocate and a constant skeptic, even to my own thoughts. Because Speaker Johnson, what does he have to do? Well, he's got to fundraise. Like, that's kind of his duty number one after taking over from McCarthy, which is sad and disgusting. But so then I'm like, wait, was it a big GOP donor, one of these Lockheed folks, Northrop Grumman? Did one of them get his ear first? Because literally right now, Speaker Johnson has 3 Republican votes he can spare on any bill. With this recent news of a retirement of a senior Republican from Colorado, Ken Buck, in a week, when he retires next week or resigns next week, Johnson's going to be able to only spare 2 Republican votes in the House. Like, this is a slim majority, which kind of means, and I've kind of been pushing the UAP caucus folks on this, like, if you guys ask him for a select committee, he can't say no because there's 8 of you, like, or 6 of you. And like, he needs every vote he can get. Right. And so right now, like, that's where I'm curious, because this Congress has been so weird and dysfunctional. Like right now, there's a threat of a government shutdown hanging over our heads next week. And what did Congress do? They took half of this week off. Like, it's just a strange fucking Congress. And they're all running for re-election 2024. And so that means they need to fundraise. So I'm like, wait, did a donor get to Johnson first? Or does Johnson just not even care? Someone mentioned this issue to him and he's like, you're fucking talking to me about this? He's like, I gotta fund the government. I gotta raise $10 million for my party. And so, yeah, I'm still fishing out, and I just don't, like, I'm perpetually skeptical of Turner, because I think, based on his new look, that when he looks in the mirror, he's perpetually skeptical of himself. But we don't go with my gut. We report what we know. So I'm going to keep pulling threads on this. Because even our Courtney interview, which is what you started with, he says, I think it was probably both. Well, I've asked every single member of the Senate who co-sponsored Schumer's amendment, Gillibrand, Rubio, Young, Heinrich, and Rounds. None of them, and like Rounds and Schumer wrote the bill. Then they got the other 4, so it's 6, but they got the other 4 to like pile on because it was so broadly bipartisan. None of those 5 knew who gutted their amendment, which is strange. And like Schumer's staff, they haven't been helpful. So that's where I'm super curious. Because again, who gutted Schumer's baby to his face? Or does that mean it's not Schumer's baby and he didn't care what happened to it? You know, he did promise former leader Harry Reid that he would, move this issue as carrying on his legacy. But does he not give a shit about it? Like, I know he knows the name David Grush, because when I asked him last year, it was interesting. He knew Grush, but then he was like, no, I'm not talking about it. And I'm like, you usually just like say, get the fuck away, little boy. But this time your eyes are like, I know Grush. So
wow,
we'll see.
So
I need more help out here.
Yeah, no, man, I'm sure. But let's talk hypothetically. Do you see Schumer or Rounds or any of them coming through this year with some language to go into next year's NDAA? Or do you think we'll see something more likely come out of the House, kind of from Burchett or someone like that?
So we just, in the past week, I think we dropped 2 new exclusive with Senator Rounds. He hasn't even like looked at the new Arrow report. And I don't 100% fault him for it, because he's like, no, I've got a schedule to like look at the classified version. And I'm like, duh, I want the fucking classified version. But I might have looked at it like a month ago. And so we'll see. Again, this is just a strange Congress. Like, we got the threat of a government shutdown hanging over us now. When the new year started in January, there was a threat of a government shutdown, and they just kicked the can to now. We're in the midst of the 2024 election, where Trump is flexing and showing his ownership of this Congress in many ways. You've got the Gaza and Israeli conflict really sucking a lot of the air out of the town, because that issue is pitting progressive Democrats against more moderate ones, which is kind of coming to a head, which Speaker Johnson and Republicans must be like, thank you, Lord. Finally, you answered our prayer. And got some Democrats in disarray. But like, Republicans, they still can't even agree on anything. Like, they're trying to like outcut each other. And so like, they're literally just out there on the House floor, knives out, metaphorically, of course. And so even though we're now in March, it still feels like January, according to...
Yeah, it does.
No, hell, it feels like the end of last year, legislatively. And talking to these members, like, I can't fault them, because the threat of a government shutdown, it truly sucks all the air out of this town, because, like, you can't even bitch about the Pentagon and Arrow, like, if they don't have funding. You know, if anything, those folks get to like unplug and do their secretive shit more secretively. And one thing we have with the House UAP caucus, I think so Matt Gaetz isn't technically on the caucus, but him and then Burchett and Nancy Mace, they were also 3 of those folks were part of ousting former Speaker McCarthy. And so like, they've got other senior Republicans, you know, McCarthy's allies, who have got daggers out looking for them at any chance they can get. And so just the dynamics of this Congress are strange, which is where like, I don't give lawmakers a pass for their shitty work, because this is historically one of the worst Congresses that we've seen. And like, the head of the Freedom Caucus, you know, the far right conservative group, he got in my face a little bit, and he's like, what? You know, you're using your dumb liberal media, standard, you know, what's a productive Congress? I was like, sir, you don't fuck with Professor Laslo. Because I'm like, sir, your party can't even effectively unwind the administrative state that you hate. Like, it's not even that you can't pass bills. You can't fire people in the executive branch because you're such a shit show. And he shut the fuck up. So yeah, this Congress is a shit show. But don't remember, the UAP issue, this is like basically the only nonpartisan issue in Congress. People try to make it partisan at various times for one reason or another. But no, you don't just have these guys from the Freedom Caucus who are at the table here and really pushing on it. You've got AOC coming out of those meetings, Ro Khanna from Cali. Jamie Raskin, who's the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, who was one of the impeachment managers for Trump's second impeachment, maybe first. Who knows? I guess Wiki knows. But so Jamie Raskin, constitutional lawyer, he's at the table on this. Why? Because he said people he trusted, which I read as fundraisers, or donors.
Right, yeah.
He's like, people I trusted told me I should check this out. But remember, he's a constitutional lawyer. So Grush's second claim that there are these hidden SAPs from Congress, that must awaken any constitutional lawyer, which Speaker Johnson is. So I'm curious going forward what those conversations look like. I mean, because Tim Burchett, he just had Johnson with him down in Knoxville, fundraising for him. And, when the speaker's in your district fundraising, he's just rushing through. But they got some one-on-one time together. And Burchett could have said, hey, I want to talk about this local community college that needs funding. I want to talk about, the opioid epidemic, how it's, gutting that region in Knoxville. Well, what did he say? I want to talk to you about UAPs. And from that, Burchett told us at Ask a Poll, I learned something new about Speaker Johnson. Because Burchett was like, a couple times in the interview, he was like, Johnson took notes. And he's like, you can tell, like, Johnson cares about an issue. He's a nerdy wonk. I'm a nerdy wonk. I hide it. I try to hide it with my bangs. But he's like, Speaker Johnson was taking notes. And he's like, yeah, he wasn't bullshitting. Like, he's taking it seriously. So, yeah, that's where I'm curious. Yeah, all I have is curiosity and questions. With this Congress, I have few to no fucking answers.
Well, listen, Matt, you're doing a grand job. It's highly, highly appreciated in the community. I know so many people have your back and really are out to support you. And I know we're stuck for time.
You all got my front too, because when you all send me the questions, but seriously, I've been a reporter there 18 years. Like, Bernie Sanders hates me as much for my, good reporting on him signing a book deal with Penguin Random House. Oh, you're the antitrust dude? Fuck off, you hypocrite. So like, I got a lot of haters from everywhere. But when I come to Bernie Sanders with a question from someone from Vermont, like, I just recede into the background. And like, that's where our subscribers, our community at Ask a Poll, you guys have so much power that I don't. I've got access to these folks. But when a question comes from you, it just hits so much harder than anything I can think up.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, Matt, I know we're short on time and you'll have to come back because I've got a million questions from other people. But
please,
I really want to reiterate to people watching this and listening to really go out and support Matt's work at Ask a Poll. Matt, please tell us where we can find you.
You can find me in a gutter tomorrow morning if you're in DC. Just kidding. There's some good gutters here. But no, askapoll.com, Ask a Poll, like ask a politician. Yeah, subscribe. You can subscribe for free. All of our audio we put out for free. Sometimes if you come to our site from X or Twitter or whatever, because there's these publishing wars going on between Elon Musk and all these other spots, sometimes you can't get to the site and it looks like, oh, these assholes paywalled the whole thing. No. Just go directly to askapoll.com and we always have our raw interview out there for everyone to listen to. And then we have like the main quotes up at the top. Folks, if you got some extra money, if you just got paid and you're feeling lucky, paid supporters mean the world. I've got some former interns and then current interns working for me. And unlike when I came to DC for a 6-month unpaid internship 18 years ago, I pay all my interns, even if I'm a broke joke. So yeah, askapoll.com. Get engaged with the community and seriously, keep the questions coming, because when I'm flying through the Capitol and like I've had numerous, it's like heaven's a lot like hell. Like for the past few weeks, the internet, we've been blowing it up at askapol.com. So I've had like 5 or 6 competing like viral stories. So my DMs are a hot mess. But when questions come in, I see them, and then literally sometimes the next person I see is that lawmaker, and then I ask your question to the lawmaker, and then you listen to it and tell me where I fucked up, or you get to hear them lie to you yourself. Like, that means a lot, because I've had these assholes lie to me in my face for years.
That's amazing, man.
Fam.
Yeah, no, listen, Matt, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it. I'll make sure all the links are in the description of this video, but I just want to say thank you so much. Stay in touch, and we'll have you back soon. And enjoy the rest of your evening, man. Much appreciated.
Anytime. This is fun, bro.
Thank you, man. And everyone watching and listening, again, make sure you go and support Matt and Ask a Poll. And thank you for being here. As always, we have a weekly interview drop on this channel. I really appreciate the support. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.